The table of shewbread. On the holy place, once the priest enters the door, he'll find on his right the table of shewbread. Literally means face bread, the bread that faces God. So on the north side, the right side of the priest, upon entering the door, you'll find the holy furniture, which is called the table of shewbread. This bread should be differentiated from the manna. The manna is bread from heaven, typifying Christ becoming, taking the form of a man, which is not a byproduct of Palestine or a byproduct of the earth. While the bread on the table is made of fine flour, from the purest of fine flour, which is a byproduct of, which is a product of the earth. So it should be differentiated. The manna is the one that sustains them while they are in the wilderness. And so that's why we could see that Jewish people, when it comes to eating bread, let us remember that bread for them is their staple food, the food that would give them strength and nourishment for the day. But for us Filipinos, we eat rice, which is our staple food. But for the Jewish people, bread is kind of like their staple food, their food for the day. So it should be differentiated, and we all know that because of the manna, bread for them is mystical. That's why when the Jewish people eat bread, they do not use knives to break the bread, but rather they uses their hands, because of the experience of the manna. So its location, it's on the north side of the tabernacle. You see that the instruction of God given to Moses upon the construction of this table of shewbread. We could find that in Exodus chapter number 25, verse 23 to verse 30. Verse 23. And thou shalt, this is the instruction of God for Moses, and thou shalt also make a table of shittim wood. So this only the place in the tabernacle where you can find a table and a bread. But there's no chair to sit upon. There's no seat. Only at the Holy of Holies we find a seat, which is the mercy seat. But God is the one that sits on the throne. So remember that in the holy place, the priests are always standing up ready to minister there at the holy place. Thou shalt make a table of shittim wood. Again, this is made of, the table is made of wood, shittim, acacia wood. 2 cubits shall be the dimensions is given there. We all know that a cubit is equivalent to 18 inches. So the dimension is given here in verse 23. So this table is kind of a small table. Verse 24, and thou shalt overlay it with gold. So this is made of wood, but overlaid with gold. So most of the materials there at the holy place is gold, while in the outer court, what you find is bronze. Most are bronze materials, but if you go inside, then you will find gold. So this table is made of wood overlaid with gold. So that speaks of the hypostatic union of the Lord Jesus Christ, the God-man. And make thereto a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt make unto it a border of a handbreadth. So a handbreadth is measured 3 to 5 inches. round about, and thou shalt make a golden crown to the border thereof round about. So in here we find a handbreadth of a border for the table, as you can see here in the illustration. Up there's a border for the table, 3 to 5 inches, a handbreadth, and a crown. A crown is not the crown that we are thinking of, but rather the border that is designed to look like a crown. So the purpose of this border is so as to prevent those things on top of the table from slipping or tilting over the table, to hold the materials together there on top of the table. And in verse 26 we find, and thou shalt make for it 4 rings of gold. So the table has uh, four four feet, and on those sides you have 4 rings made of gold. So the table is wood overlaid with gold, but the rings is made of gold. And put the rings in the 4 corners that are on the 4 feet thereof. So 4 rings of gold. Over against the border shall the rings be 4 places of the staves to bear the table. So the purpose of the rings is the placing of the staves on it. And thou shalt make the staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, that the table may be borne with them. So the purpose of the ring is the placing of the staves, and the staves is made of wood, shittim wood, but overlaid with gold. The purpose is that upon transportation, the priest would hold on to the staves, so they can bore. This table can be borne by the priest. And thou shalt make the dishes thereof. So here we see the utensils involved in the table of shewbread. Dishes thereof, and spoons thereof, and covers thereof, and bowls thereof to cover withal. The utensils are made of pure gold, not unlike in the bronze altar. The utensils are made of pure copper. But this time in the table of shewbread, the utensils are made of pure gold. And thou shalt set upon the table shewbread before me always. So thou shalt set upon the table shewbread before. So as we have said, this table of shewbread literally means face bread. Literally, God facing the bread. So there should always be bread on that table. The priest should make it a point that the bread would be always present there. And even in there, when they have to move in transportation, the bread remains on the table. Leviticus 24 verse 5 to 9 give us the details regarding the materials for the making of the bread. And thou shalt take fine flour. This is the purest of the fine flour that could ever be produced. And bake 12 cakes thereof. So cakes is basically bread, not the cake that you can buy on the bakery. 2/10 deal shall be in 1 cake. So equal materials, equal in length and weight, and in dimension of the bread. And thou shalt set them in 2 rows, 6 on a row on top of the other, upon the pure table before the Lord. And thou shalt put frankincense upon each row, that it may be on the bread for a memorial, even an offering made by fire unto the Lord. So the purpose of the frankincense on top of the bread is that upon the replacement, every Sabbath they have to replace the bread. And remember that the bread here stays fresh even after replacing it for a week. Every Sabbath they replace the bread there, and the priests, at least 8 priests, would gather around the table to have fellowship and eat the bread. The bread is not basically for God, but it should be eaten by the priest. The memorial of the frankincense is that the frankincense is offered on the altar of incense, but the bread is eaten by the priest. Every Sabbath he shall set it in order before the Lord continually, being taken from the children of Israel by an everlasting covenant. And it shall be Aaron's and his sons, and they shall eat it in the holy place. So they eat it every Sabbath. The priests would gather around on the table. At least 8 priests would be there and eat the bread as they replace it. For it is most holy unto him of the offerings of the Lord made by fire, by a perpetual statute. So now we will pass through the door of the tabernacle and enter the holy place. The priest had at his right hand the table of shewbread. As we have said, here is the frankincense on top of the bread, which is offered on the altar of incense upon the replacement of the bread every Sabbath by the priest. The purpose of the golden table was to hold 12 cakes of bread made of fine flour. The purest of fine flour that could ever be produced is the one used here. It has a secret ingredient and entrusted to a priest family to make the bread for this table of shewbread, literally facing God. They were placed there in 2 rows of 6, each loaf representing one of the tribes of Israel. So it is 12, representing each tribe as recorded there in Leviticus 24 verse 8, representing each tribe. So every time Moses would ask for an offering here, the tribes make sure that they offer the best flour, the finest flour that would be used, because it represents their tribe. So they would give the best offering for the use of this, for the making of this bread that would be placed on the table, replaced every Sabbath. So the historian Josephus indicates that the bread was unleavened. Of course, you are in a holy place, so no leaven should be present there. So it is but practical that the bread in the table is unleavened bread, because leaven represents sin. Basically, leaven means that you do not take something from the past and bring it to the present. You do not bring your past in your present life. This bread is sometimes referred to as being the shewbread, facing God, the face bread, because its literal meaning is bread of the face, bread set out before the face or presence of God. It should be always present there, facing God. Bread should be present. The priest should make sure of that. And the 4 vessels, which is made of pure gold, as we have discussed already, dishes, pans, that's why it is circle, round in shape, because of the pans that were used in baking this bread. Pitchers for liquid offerings or wine offerings, and the bowls containing the frankincense. On top of the bread, the one that is offered on the altar of incense upon the replacement of the bread every Sabbath. So the table's purpose was to show the bread, which were 12 small flat round loaves that were laid out in an orderly fashion, so as to be displayed. And you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes with it. 2/10 of an ephah shall be in each cake. You shall set them in 2 rows, 6 in a row, and the pure gold table before the Lord. 12 representing the 12 tribes of Israel, 6 on each side. You see, the shewbread is made of fine flour representing something from the earth. It is baked, that speaks of the agony and suffering of the Lord Jesus Christ. It is unleavened, nothing artificial. 2/10 means 2 deals of 10, and sprinkled with pure uh, frankincense. Every seventh day or Sabbath day, fresh hot loaves were provided by Aaron, the priest, were entitled to eat the old loaves while standing in the holy place. So every Sabbath, they say that this bread remained fresh, though it has already been 7 days past. But once they eat this, is still fresh, made of the purest of the fine flour materials. The priests that are assigned in doing this, taking care of the bread, has a secret ingredient for this uh, for the making of this bread that is placed on the holy table. So the bread is not for God but for the priest to eat. You see, in First Chronicles 9:31-32, we find here in Matithia, one of the Levites, who was the firstborn of Shallum, the Korathite, had the set office over the things that were made in the pans. And other of their brethren, the sons of the Kohathites, were over the shewbread to prepare it every Sabbath. As I've said, uh, there is one family that is assigned to make this shewbread that would be placed on the table, and the ingredient and how do they bake this bread, how do they make it, is a secret ingredient that only this family alone knows how to make this bread, lest others would know it and use that bread on offering it to an idol or a false god. So that is how they make this bread. And one of the Kohathites, one of the family from the Kohathites, are the ones assigned in making this bread, making sure that they pass on to their generation to the generation. The secret ingredient are passed on how to make this bread, and they kept it for themselves, lest it should be used apart from the offering for the one true God. So the frankincense that was removed each week was a special oblation or offering to God. The bread is not offered, but rather the frankincense, memorial as a memorial and a reminder for the Jews that that this bread, everything that they have or food on the table, is provided and given by God. The 12 loaves were the same material, as I've said, size and weight, and there should be no partiality. According to Leviticus 22, if a priest was unclean, he couldn't eat of the shewbread. According to the tradition, 8 priests held hands as they changed the bread and pass it for fellowship. So this table speaks of our communion and fellowship amongst the priests, and a communion with God, reminding us that He is the one that sustains us and provides food and bread on the table. No sitting down, for all the bread was on a table, no priest could ever be seated. Though there's a table there, there's no chair or seat. Only on the mercy, only on the holy of holies you find a seat, but God sits on the throne. You find the mercy seat there. So they are always standing ready to serve, as Hebrews chapter 10 verse 11 tells us. And every priest stands ministering daily and offering repeatedly the same sacrifices. They do it twice a day. They make a burnt offering sacrifices. They trim the altar of incense every week. They change the bread on the holy table. They do it ceremoniously, routinely, which can never take away sins. But this man, speaking of the Lord Jesus Christ, after he had offered one sacrifice of himself, not on the bronze altar, but the sacrifice of himself on the cross for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God, from that time waiting until his enemies are made his footstool. For by one offering he has perfected forever those who are being sanctified. So upon moving or journeying on the table of the presence, they shall spread a blue cloth and put on it the dishes, the pans, the bowls, and the pitchers for pouring, and the showbread shall be on it. It's, as we have said, bread should be there continually facing God. They shall spread over them a scarlet cloth and cover the same with a covering of badger skins, and they shall insert its post. So the outer covering is the badger's skins. So you may pause here and read the question, what made the bread hollow? Read Numbers chapter 15, verse 17 to 21, and try to answer that as you pass your requirement on this table of shewbread. So what this table of shewbread tells us, it speaks of Jesus Christ as the bread of life. John 6:51. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. So it doesn't mean that you have to literally eat the flesh of the Lord Jesus Christ, as he represents himself as the bread of life. What does this tells us? That Jesus Christ is the bread of life. That means you must have the Lord Jesus Christ in your life. He must be in your life. You do not have to eat literally his flesh, thinking that it is the bread, literal bread. But this tells us that Jesus Christ is, you must have in your life the Lord Jesus Christ. And Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. So what is the significance of this table of shewbread? It is a memorial. It is a reminder. Every time the feast of Passover is celebrated by the Jews, this table of shewbread is brought outside the tabernacle or the temple for the people to see, and they be reminded that it is God that sustains them, that provided for them, that gave them this provision, that provided them food that they could eat, food on the table, bread on the table. It is a memorial and a reminder that it is God. He is the one that sustains us. You see that if God has provided for us, which is something that the most important, which is the salvation of our souls, how much more will He not provide the basic necessities that we need in our lives? He is the bread. He is the table of shewbread reminds us that He is the one that will provide us bread on the table, food on the table. Especially now in these times of crisis that we are experiencing, let us thus be reminded that He is the manna, the bread that came down from heaven. He died for us. He was sacrificed for us so that we can have salvation for our souls. If He provided salvation for our souls, how much more will He not also provide bread on the table and food on the table? So, uh, just trust Him and have faith that He will be the one to provide for us. So that's it. Thank you, and God bless.